Welcome back, sweetheart. I didn't expect that moment, the way the whole room seemed to freeze as she looked at me, really looked, and said the words that cracked something wide open in me. Wait, you're the one he told us about? It happened just like that, at a party I didn't want to be at, surrounded by people who hadn't thought about me in years. And yet suddenly, everyone was staring. It was my brother Adam's engagement party, held at our parents' place, the same house where I'd grown up learning to stay quiet, to be useful, to shrink myself just enough to keep the peace. I'd only come out of a strange sense of duty, the way you do when the family who made you feel like an outsider suddenly decides they need you to fill a chair. The house hadn't changed much. Still smelled like lemon polish and overcooked roast. My mother had set the table like it was a competition, and my father was already 3 drinks in, laughing too loudly at something no one found funny. And Adam? Adam was the star. He always was. Charming, well-dressed, grinning like the world had fallen into his lap. His fiancée, Rachel, was new poised, warm, the kind of woman who made eye contact when she shook your hand. I liked her instantly, which only made what came next more disorienting. We were in the kitchen, just the 2 of us. She was fixing a plate of hors d'oeuvres and offered me a glass of wine. I was reaching for it when she suddenly paused and tilted her head, squinting at me like she'd just solved a puzzle. "Wait," she said slowly, her eyes flicking back and forth across my face. "You're the one. The sister he told us about." I blinked. "The one. He said you were the reason he works so hard. That he always felt like he had to make up for something." She smiled, but there was confusion behind it. "But you're nothing like I pictured." I didn't know what to say. My breath caught in my chest, like something invisible had just been yanked out from under me. Rachel looked genuinely puzzled. "He said you were cold. Controlling. That you used to." She stopped herself. "Sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up. Now that I've met you." I could feel the hum of the party beyond the kitchen door, laughter, glass clinking, my mother's voice too loud again. But in that little pocket of silence between us, everything shifted. I was suddenly not the quiet girl in the corner anymore. I was a character in his story, a villain in a script I never auditioned for. I set the glass down. My hand was trembling slightly. "What else," I asked softly, "did he say about me?" Rachel's eyes widened, just a bit. She wasn't expecting that. I don't know if I should." "It's okay," I said, though I didn't believe it. "I just want to understand." She hesitated, then gave the smallest shrug. "Just that you always made him feel small. That you were their favorite. Her voice trailed off again. "But you don't seem like that at all. You seem kind." Kind. It landed in my chest like a stone in water. I had spent my whole life trying to be that kind, careful, good. And yet here I was, a stranger to my brother's fiancée, introduced as a cautionary tale. That was the moment I realized something was very wrong. Not just with my family, but with the entire story I thought I was living in. I looked around the kitchen. The same scratched countertops, the same chipped tile by the stove, the same house where I'd once cried myself to sleep because I'd gotten a B+ and Adam had called me a failure. The wine glass sat untouched. My appetite was gone. But something else had arrived, a flicker of clarity, a quiet heat rising in my throat. If Adam had rewritten history, then I was going to find the original pages. Because I hadn't come here to be a footnote in his fairy tale. I came to find the truth. And I wasn't leaving without it. I didn't return to the party. I wandered outside instead, out to the edge of the back garden where the citronella candles flickered and the laughter felt like it came from another century. The sky was bruised with sunset, and the trees whispered low in the December wind. I stood by the old swing set, the one my father never took down, though neither of us had touched it since childhood, and tried to remember the last time Adam had spoken about me like a person. I couldn't. It had always been stories, his versions, his edits, his performances, and somehow I'd become the antagonist without ever seeing the script. The cold bit at my fingers as I watched the windows glow golden. My parents were inside, beaming like they'd won something. I tried to conjure up the version of me Adam might have described to Rachel, controlling, cold, always needing to be the best. I tried to wear her in my mind like an ill-fitting coat, but it didn't fit. It never had. What had I ever done to earn that story? I sat on the edge of the garden bench and let myself remember. Not the curated memories my family liked to share at dinners, but the real ones. The ones no one ever asked me about. Adam's science fair project in 6th grade, the one I stayed up helping him with because he panicked the night before. I'd built half of it myself while he watched cartoons. He won 2nd place. He never mentioned my name. Or the time in high school when he got caught drinking and blamed me, said I was the bad influence, the one who let him sneak in through the basement window. I had grounded myself for his mistake, just to keep the peace. But the one that hit hardest, the one that still made my throat ache, was the scholarship. It was mine. Full ride. Prestigious. Everything I'd worked for. But the same day the letter came, my mother sat me down and said Adam was struggling. He'd gotten into the same school, but couldn't afford it, and it would mean everything to him if we both went. I'd said yes, gave it up, told the committee I was deferring. Adam got my spot. He lasted a year, and I never went back. I told myself it was noble. That's what good daughters do. Good sisters. But sitting on that bench in the cold, I realized something I hadn't let myself say out loud before. That wasn't love. That was theft dressed in family colors. A soft voice startled me. Milla? It was Rachel. She walked toward me, her heels sinking slightly in the grass. She'd thrown a shawl over her shoulders, but the cold still flushed her cheeks pink. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to upset you. He always talks about you like someone I should avoid. But I met you tonight and you just seem, she hesitated, wounded. That word. It cracked something inside me. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. I think I've spent most of my life trying not to be, I said quietly. But I didn't know he still talks about me like that. Rachel nodded, then sat beside me. I think he's scared of you, she said. Not in a bad way. Just like he knows you saw who he really was, before he figured out how to become someone else. I stared at her, stunned. I'm not sure he's told me the full truth, she added. About you. About a lot of things. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She reached into her purse and handed me something, a small card. Her handwriting was neat. This is my number, in case you ever want to talk. Really talk. I took it, my hand shaking just slightly. Not from fear this time, but something else. A flicker of hope. She stood and looked back toward the house. Just so you know, she added, he said you were the favorite. That's why he resented you. But you weren't. I looked up sharply. What? She smiled, but there was sadness in it. I've met your parents, Milla. You weren't the favorite. You were just the one who didn't need rescuing. She left me sitting there in the cold, my breath curling in the air like ghosts of every truth I'd never said. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. But I also felt something creeping in, something uneasy. Because if Rachel saw through him this easily, then Adam had to know his version of me was slipping. And I'd learned a long time ago. Adam doesn't like losing control of the story. He was going to rewrite it again, and this time, I wasn't going to let him. 2 days after the party, Adam called me. I almost didn't pick up. The name flashing across my screen made my stomach clench the way it always did when I was younger and heard our father shouted down the hallway, not in anger, but in that impatient, get out of the way kind of tone that echoed all through our childhood. But something in me wanted to hear his voice, just to know which version of him I'd be getting. Milla, he said, too casually, like nothing had happened. You got a minute? Sure, I lied. There was a pause. Then I think you made quite the impression on Rachel. I didn't answer. She said you two had a chat in the garden, that you connected. Still, I said nothing. You didn't tell her anything weird, did you? That was when I knew. That quiet, sharp tone clipped and coated in sugar. Adam's old voice. The one that always came before a veiled threat. She liked you, he added. Said you were sweet. Said she couldn't believe half the things I told her. I heard the implication. Not quite spoken, but thick between the lines. You're messing with something that doesn't belong to you. I almost laughed. Adam, I said softly, why did you tell her I was cruel? The line went quiet. I imagined him blinking, calculating, shifting. You were, he said finally. Sometimes. I felt the blood rush to my ears. I gave up everything for you. He laughed, bitter and small. You always think that, don't you? Like the world owes you a medal because you played martyr once in high school. I stood up. I hadn't even realized I'd been sitting, but something in me needed to rise. I didn't play anything. I was 16. I let you take a scholarship I earned because Mom said you needed it more. And I dropped out. Great trade, he snapped. My heart pounded. You blamed me for everything you couldn't do yourself. And then you rewrote the story so it wouldn't hurt as much. He scoffed. This again. The poor misunderstood Mila show. You told Rachel I was the reason you work so hard. You were. That's not love, I said. That's scapegoating. The silence on the other end stretched. And then his voice dropped into something colder. Look, whatever story you've told yourself, that's your business. But I'd appreciate it if you stayed out of mine. That's done more than I thought it would. I didn't ask to be in it, I whispered. You put me there. You made me the villain so you could feel like the hero. The line crackled. Then, finally, he said it, the thing he always wanted to say out loud. You were always the one they looked at. Even when I failed, they still compared me to you. You were the gold standard, Mila. The good one. The one who never made mistakes. I hated you for it. I went still. You were their favorite, he added, voice tight. Don't pretend you didn't know that. And just like that, the truth cracked open. I wasn't the favorite, but I was the mirror. The one who never made them worry. The one who followed the rules. The one who kept the peace. And when Adam crashed, they used me to shame him into standing up. That was the real wound. Not favoritism, usefulness. I had been used to manage him, to model who he was supposed to be, and he had resented me for it ever since. Not because I was loved more, but because I was needed more. He didn't say goodbye, just hung up. I stood in my apartment with the phone still pressed to my ear, the silence ringing louder than the call ever was. I thought of Rachel. I thought of how she looked at me, surprised that I wasn't the monster she expected. And I thought of how quickly Adam's voice turned sharp the moment he realized his story might be unraveling. That was when I opened the drawer. The one with the old box of photos. Buried beneath years of forgotten snapshots, I found the letter. My acceptance letter. The original scholarship envelope. Still sealed. I had never opened it. Never let myself read the words meant for me. My hands trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Dear Camilla Grace, we are thrilled to offer you full admission. I stopped reading because none of them had ever seen this. Not my parents. Not Adam. Not even me. And suddenly I understood something that turned my stomach. He hadn't stolen my future. They had handed it to him. And I had let them. We're heading into the storm now. I couldn't sleep that night. The letter sat on my kitchen table like a ghost, glowing under the overhead light, whispering every version of my life that could have been, the ones I traded for silence. My name was printed right there, formal and full of promise. Camilla Grace. It felt almost sacred, untouched by shame or sacrifice. And I'd never opened it until now. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears didn't come the way I thought they would. Instead, a strange stillness settled over me, the kind that usually arrives just before a quake. I could feel something shifting beneath the floorboards of my life. Something was coming, and this time, I wasn't going to step aside. The next morning, I wrote Rachel a message. Hi. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. There's something you should see. About Adam. About me. It's not dramatic. It's just the truth. Would you meet me for coffee? She replied within the hour. Of course. Just tell me when. We met that Friday. A small cafe near her work, sunlight pooling through the big windows, making everything look more forgiving than it really was. She wore a soft green coat and no makeup, just freckles and a quiet tension behind her eyes. I'm sorry if this is crossing a line, I said as we sat down. But I needed to clear something up. Not for me. For you. I handed her the letter first. She read it slowly, carefully. Then again. You got in, she whispered. I did. Full ride. I never told anyone. I was too busy being gracious. They asked me to give it up for Adam and told me I was doing the right thing. That it was love. She looked up. It wasn't. I shook my head. No, it was obedience dressed up as virtue. Rachel folded the letter and placed it gently back on the table. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't blink them away. He never told me this, she said. He just said his sister made things hard. That you liked to compete. That you always had to be better. I never competed, I said. He just hated how easily I followed the rules. Because it reminded him he couldn't. She was quiet for a long time. Then he's been different lately. Not just after the party. Before that, too. Quick to anger. Jumpy. Defensive if I ask about work, or money, or anything. At first, I thought it was stress. But now I think it's fear. What do you mean? I think he knows something's coming. He's afraid someone's going to see him clearly. I swallowed. What are you afraid of? I asked. Rachel looked at me, her gaze steady. That I already have. She stirred her coffee slowly, her spoon clinking against the porcelain like a metronome of unraveling time. I found a folder, she said suddenly. Last week. In his home office drawer. It had a copy of his college transcript. Some old journal entries. Letters. One from your mother. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. I leaned forward. What did it say? Rachel met my eyes. She called you dramatic. Said it was a relief you'd chosen not to go to school because you'd always been too delicate for real pressure. Said she hoped the sacrifice would mature you. I felt the air leave my lungs. Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photocopy. She slid it across the table. I didn't want to read it. I already knew the tone, my mother's signature mix of control and condescension. But I read it anyway. Camilla has always struggled with balance. She needs to feel needed. Giving Adam this opportunity may finally help her grow out of that. It was dated the week after I declined the scholarship. She sent this to the admissions office, Rachel said quietly. It was part of his file. I stared at the page, my fingers trembling. She said I needed to feel needed, I whispered. As if that's a flaw. Or a design, Rachel replied. They built you that way. So you'd always be the one who gave up the bigger slice. I covered my face with my hands. For years, I'd told myself I chose my quiet life. That I liked staying close to home. That I didn't regret not going to college. That Adam was just lucky, and I was just grounded. But here it was in writing, the architecture of the lie. My mother's language, Adam's resentment, their combined need to keep me small so he could grow. I had been the latter. The stepping stone. The story they told themselves to sleep better at night. I feel crazy, I murmured. You're not, Rachel said. You're just waking up in the middle of a long, slow theft. I looked at her. Why are you helping me? Her eyes softened. Because he told me once that he doesn't trust you. That you always had an angle. But what I saw at that party wasn't someone calculating. It was someone trying not to break. I nodded slowly. Rachel reached into her bag again. She placed a small black flash drive in my palm. What is this? His journal, she said. The private one. He types it. Password protected, but he saved the recovery answers under his dog's name. He used the same password he uses for Netflix. What's in it? Her voice dropped. The real story. I stared at the drive. It was cold in my hand. Heavy. She stood to leave. You didn't come looking for revenge, she said softly. But I think you might have found justice. And then she was gone. I sat alone, the flash drive burning like a match against my skin. And I knew I wasn't the villain in Adam's story. But I might be the ending. 3 days where I cleaned my apartment more than it needed, brewed too much tea, and stared at the flash drive like it might bite me. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe evidence of how he twisted my memory. Maybe something damning, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe I was still wrong. But I wasn't. When I finally plugged it into my laptop and typed in his usual password, Winston123, after the golden retriever our parents liked more than either of us, the screen flickered once and a folder opened. Journal_entries_2012_2025. There were hundreds of documents. Dated, organized, clinical. Just like Adam. He wrote like he was building a case, one I didn't know I was on trial for. I opened the first one at random. July 3rd, 2015. Dinner at Mom and Dad's. Mila came. She's still playing the saint, offered to do the dishes, help with prep, all that usual stuff. I can't stand how she does that. Makes the rest of us look selfish. She's always been the favorite, but she hides behind sacrifice. I wonder what she'd be if no one needed her anymore. Another. September 2020. Rachel asked about Mila again. She thinks it's weird that I don't talk to my sister much. I told her it's because Mila makes people uncomfortable. She demands closeness, then pulls away. But the truth is, she sees through me. She always has. And I hate how that feels. I stopped reading. That was the truth. There, in his own words. He wasn't afraid of who I was. He was afraid of what I remembered. Afraid that I'd show people the version of him that didn't match the charming fiancé, the rising lawyer, the dutiful son. Because deep down, he knew I was the only person in the room who hadn't forgotten who he used to be, the boy who blamed me for his failures and then rewrote me out of his triumphs. I copied 4 entries. Just 4. The ones that laid it bare. And then I sent him an email. Subject line, "You dropped this. Adam, I've spent my life cleaning up after you. Quietly, carefully. But this is the last time. Attached are some of your thoughts. I figured if you wanted to erase me from your story, I might as well keep a few pages. I'm not angry. I'm just done. You don't need to reply. You already told me everything I needed to know. Mila." He called 3 hours later. I didn't pick up. He texted once. "What do you want?" I turned off my phone. I didn't want anything. Not revenge. Not an apology. Not even recognition. I just wanted out. Out of the narrative. Out of the role. Out of the shadow. Later that week, Rachel texted me. I told him I read the files. "We're postponing the wedding. Thank you for telling me the truth, even when it hurt." And just like that, not with a blowout or a betrayal, but with a quiet refusal, the story ended. Or maybe it began. A few days later, I visited the college campus I'd once turned down. I walked the grounds alone, just to see what I'd missed. The trees were taller now, the buildings newer, but something about it still felt like mine, like it remembered me, even if I'd never signed the papers. I didn't mourn, not in the way I expected, because I hadn't really lost my future. I'd just delayed it. I stood outside the admissions office and looked at the red brick facade, the same one from the photo on the letter I'd finally opened. And I thought, maybe it's not too late. Maybe it's never too late. That night, I came home, made tea, and cleared out the drawer where I used to keep all my family stories. The ones I used to tell myself to survive. The ones where I was always the good daughter, the quiet one, the helper. I kept one thing, the scholarship letter, and I pinned it on the wall above my desk. A reminder, I was always enough. Even when they told me I wasn't. Even when they needed me not to be. The next morning, I enrolled in a continuing education course. Literature and ethics. Just one class. Just for me. Because I wanted to hear stories again. But this time, I wanted to write my own.